Welcome back, viewers, to the latest researches and news. Today we have 4 developing updates as Ethiopia's war enters a new phase. First of all, we will update you about the Fano claims capture of large Ethiopian military bases. Tigray Defense Force forces advancing toward Ethiopian National Defense Force positions. The Amhara Tigray coalition is tightening. Secondly, about Gondar Fano factions have formally united under a joint command. The last major Fano zone to achieve internal unity, what this means for the resistance going forward. After that, about fresh clashes erupt on the Sidama-Oromia border, the same flashpoint that killed dozens just months ago, and still no solution from Addis Ababa. And in last, about the critical question, can Gondar Fano work alongside Tigray People Liberation Front? And what does the answer mean for the Semdo alliance? Let us begin with the most significant battlefield development of the day. Fano sources are reporting that Amhara Fano forces have captured large military bases previously held by the Ethiopian National Defense Force. These are not small outposts or patrol positions. These are established bases with the weapons, ammunition, infrastructure, and strategic value that come with them. For the resistance, capturing a base is not just a military victory. It is a logistical gain. Every base captured means weapons that no longer face the resistance and weapons that now serve it. Simultaneously, reports from multiple ground sources confirm that Tigray Defense Force units are actively advancing toward areas where Ethiopian military forces are positioned. This is coordinated movement. This is not defensive repositioning. The Tigray Defense Force is moving with intention toward the Ethiopian National Defense Forces lines. And here is the broader strategic picture that these two developments point to. The Amhara Tigray Coalition Fano and Tigray Defense Force is not fighting two separate wars. They are fighting one war on two fronts, squeezing the federal military from multiple directions simultaneously. Reports also indicate that the international dimension of this conflict is becoming clearer. Egypt, Sudan, and regional partners are watching closely, with some providing varying degrees of support and strategic interest in the outcome of this war. The Horn of Africa is no longer just watching Ethiopia's civil war. It is increasingly connected to it. The Ethiopian National Defense Force is being pressured from Amhara in the west, from Tigray in the north, and from Oromia in the south. It cannot reinforce all fronts at once, and the resistance knows it. Now to a development inside the resistance that matters enormously for the months ahead. The Amhara Fano National Movement has officially announced the formal unification of Gondar Fano factions under a joint command structure. To understand why this matters, you need to understand where Gondar Fano has been. While other Fano zones moved toward internal unity over recent months, Gojjam Fano largely united, Wollo Fano came together, Shewa Fano consolidated, Gondar remained the exception. Divided between competing factions and commanders who could not agree on a shared structure, Gondar Fano was the weak link in what is otherwise a strengthening resistance chain. Why was Gondar so difficult to unite? Multiple reasons, some involving interference and division tactics by the Prosperity Party, which has consistently tried to fracture Fano from within. But to be honest, some of the responsibility also lies with Fano commanders themselves. Personal rivalries, competing ambitions, and the difficulty of subordinating individual authority to a collective structure all played roles. The two main factions, one previously led by Bey Kano and the other by Johannes Negusai, have now reached an agreement. Under the newly announced structure, both commanders will jointly lead Gondar Fano for an initial period of 3 months. Other commanders have been assigned specific roles: military strategy, political affairs, public engagement, logistics. A full organizational structure for the zone has been established. The Amhara Fano National Movement spokesperson Asrat Mare Demti made the official announcement confirming the merger and the new command arrangements. This is significant. Every Fano zone in Amhara has now achieved a degree of internal unity. The resistance front, which the federal government has spent years trying to keep divided, is coming together, zone by zone, front by front. But there is an important caveat. A joint leadership of two commanders for a temporary 3-month period does not mean all tensions have been fully resolved. It means they have been managed for now. The real test of Gondar Fano's unity will come when hard decisions need to be made quickly in the middle of active combat operations. The 3-month structure suggests the agreement was a compromise, not a complete resolution. That is honest. And that is where things stand. Now the question that follows directly from Gondar Fano's unification, and that has enormous implications for the Semdo alliance. What is Gondar Fano's position on working with the Tigray People Liberation Front? This matters because the Amhara Fano National Movement, the broader Amhara Fano National Movement, has been building its strategic relationship with Tigray People Liberation Front within the Semdo framework. Fano and Tigray People Liberation Front, once bitter enemies who fought on opposite sides in 2020, are now moving toward coordinated resistance against the federal government. But Gondar Fano has historically contained commanders who were strongly opposed to any engagement with the Tigray People Liberation Front commanders, who saw the alliance with Tigray as a betrayal of Amhara identity and interests given the history of conflict between the two communities. If the newly unified Gondar Fano leadership, particularly Johannes Negusi and Bey Kano, maintains opposition to Tigray People Liberation Front engagement, then the Semdo alliance has a significant internal challenge. It would mean that even as the broader Fano movement coordinates with Tigray Defense Force, one of its most geographically important zones is not aligned with that strategy. Gondar sits directly adjacent to Tigray. If Gondar Fano and the Tigray Defense Force are not cooperating, or worse, if they are actively hostile to each other, the entire northern front of the resistance becomes complicated. On the other hand, if Gondar Fano's new unified leadership chooses to align with the Amhara Fano National Movement's broader strategic direction and engage with the Semdo framework, it would represent the completion of the most important resistance coalition in this conflict. A fully unified Fano, from Gosjam to Wulo to Shewa to Gondar, working alongside Tigray Defense Force across connected fronts. We are watching this development closely. The answer to this question may determine the shape of the war in the north for the months ahead. Finally, a brief but important update from a conflict zone that receives far less attention than it deserves. In the border area between East Guji in Oromia and East Sidama, specifically around the Goba Hema area, fresh clashes have erupted. The same location where dozens of people were killed in fierce fighting just a few months ago. The cause is territorial. A dispute over where the regional boundary lies and who has administrative authority over communities and land in contested areas. A few months ago, Oromia reorganized its administrative structures in a way that Sidama communities opposed. That reorganization was the immediate trigger for May's violence. No resolution was reached then. The underlying dispute was not addressed. Security forces were deployed, a temporary ceasefire was established, and both sides were left to wait. Now they are fighting again. Reports indicate that several people have been killed in the renewed clashes, numbers still being confirmed. Communities have been displaced, houses have been burned. This is the pattern that repeats itself across Ethiopia's regional borders. Tigray and Amhara, Amhara and Benishangul Gumuz, Amhara and Oromia, Oromia and Somali, Oromia and Sidama. Every few months, same flashpoints, same violence, same temporary security deployments, same absence of resolution. The federal government is spending significant resources, financial, political, and reputational, on a national dialogue conference in Addis Ababa that the resistance has called a propaganda exercise. Meanwhile, in Gobahema, people are dying today over a border dispute that has never been seriously addressed. If Abiy Ahmed's government genuinely wanted to demonstrate its commitment to resolving Ethiopia's conflicts, this is where it could start. Not with 4,000 delegates in a conference hall in Addis Ababa, but with a serious, binding resolution of the territorial disputes that are killing people in border communities across the country. Until then, security forces will deploy. Ceasefires will hold temporarily, and the clashes will resume. Tonight's 4 stories together tell us where Ethiopia stands. Fano is capturing military bases. Tigray Defense Force is advancing. The Amhara-Tigray coalition is tightening around the federal government's positions on multiple fronts simultaneously. Gondar Fano has united the last major Fano zone to achieve internal cohesion. The resistance is now more organizationally complete than at any point since this phase of the conflict began. The question of its relationship with Tigray People Liberation Front will determine how powerful that unity becomes. On the Sidama-Oromia border, people are dying again for the same reasons they died months ago. Because the government that claims to be facilitating national dialogue has never seriously addressed the territorial disputes tearing communities apart. And across Ethiopia, the mobilization continues. The bases have been taken. The fronts are active. The resistance is ready. We will keep watching and reporting every development. Like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update.